Around 500 people have climbed the highest point on our planet. But only a few brave souls have ever reached its deepest. As harsh as the conditions at the summit of Mount Everest may be, nothing compares to what awaits you at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. Here, perpetual darkness reigns, metal bends under pressure, and fountains of liquid sulfur gush from underwater geysers. We'll tell you about the people who dared to venture into this horror a little later. And now, let's look at the path you must take to reach the record depth. 40 meters, 131 feet, the maximum diving depth for pearl divers and amateur scuba divers. From 0 to 200 meters, 650 feet, is home to 90% of all ocean life. At such depths, light still penetrates the water column, creating conditions for phytoplankton growth. The vast biomass provides food for a huge diversity of life. Variety of small crustaceans, which in turn are food for fish. 332 meters is the record for deep diving with scuba gear. At depths from 200 to 1,000 meters, the twilight zone begins. Less than 1% of sunlight penetrates here, but the local inhabitants have learned to emit light themselves. They use bioluminescent chemical reactions to attract prey or deter predators. 565 meters is the max diving depth of the emperor penguin. Due to the lack of photosynthesis, nothing grows at such depths. But fish are still present here, many of which swim to the depths to escape predators. 1,000 meters below this depth, the sun's rays no longer reach. 1,027 meters is the diving record for a military submarine. Live at depths of up to 1,000 meters. Closely related to jellyfish. To a tube that serves as a unified digestive system. When an unwary fish, attracted by the bright light, swims close, the phore's siphon releases venomous spines, and the victim becomes dinner for the entire colony. At depths over 1 kilometer, the midnight zone begins, a place where complete darkness reigns. Food is scarce here, and deep-sea creatures are forced to conserve energy. Most creatures do not hunt, but drift lazily, collecting sediment. Marine snow, microparticles from the remains of dead fish, plants, feces, dust, and sand. At 2,200 meters, giant octopuses live here, often engaging in titanic battles with sperm whales that swim to such depths. At 4,500 meters, the depth at which anglerfish can be found. A glowing lure resembles a juicy, fat worm to its prey, but in reality, it's a luminescent bacterium living inside the appendage of a batfish. Are laid along the ocean floor at 6,100 meters, a depth that internet cables is 6,000 meters deep. To see deeper, you need to look for cracks in the tectonic plates. Colliding with each other, they form underwater volcanoes, plateaus, and trenches. This is how the Mariana Trench was formed. It lies south of Japan and stretches 2,550 kilometers long and 60 kilometers wide, resembling a crescent. This place is one of the most unexplored on our planet. We know incomparably more about the surface of Mars than about the Mariana Trench. The pressure at such a depth can turn any living organism on the surface into a bloody mist in a microsecond. For an unprotected person, it's like being trapped under a boulder weighing 500 tons. The floor of the Mariana Trench is riddled with geysers that spew liquid sulfur and carbon dioxide. These chemical compounds are lethal to surface organisms. But for some deep-sea creatures, they are essential for survival. The fact that the Mariana Trench is the deepest became known in 1875 during the expedition of the ship HMS Challenger. Technology back then, the depth measurements were incomplete, but the team managed to record the maximum figure 8,184 meters. More precise data was obtained only 76 years later. The crew of another British Challenger, using sonar, discovered a 10,994 meter deep fissure on the floor of the Mariana Trench. It was then that the deepest point in the ocean was named Challenger Deep in honor of both scientists. the deepest fish living in the Mariana Trench, was discovered quite recently. In 2014, a group of scientists from Heidel Ecosystem Status discovered a new species of sea slug capable of living at depths of more than 8,000 meters. Pale in color, with an eel-like tail and lacking scales, they appear fragile and completely unable to withstand the enormous pressure. Their unique cell structure helps them survive. Extreme cold and high pressure cause fats in cell membranes to solidify, like butter in a freezer, explains Jeffrey Trazen, the leader of the Mariana Trench expedition. Deep-sea creatures are forced to adapt their membranes to remain liquid. Therefore, their cells are filled with large amounts of saturated fats. Apart from the Mariana slug, there are no other predators at such depths, so it enjoys the lack of competition. But even this unique fish is unlikely to reach the very bottom of the Challenger abyss. Sea cucumbers, woodlice, and albino foraminifera, which resemble giant amoebas, are the most common life forms at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. It turns out that methane and liquid sulfur emissions provide a suitable energy source for microorganisms. Occasionally, a dead whale carcass sinks to the bottom, triggering a feast for all the deep-sea creatures that can last for months. The Mariana Trench is also of interest to geologists. Scientists have discovered an underwater lake of boiling sulfur at its bottom. Similar lakes exist on The first people to reach the bottom of the Mariana Trench were scientist Jacques Piccard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh. Their goal was to test a new submersible in extreme conditions. On January 23, 1960, they began a descent in the bathyscaphe Trieste, which lasted nearly 5 hours. They were unable to conduct research, as there was no scientific equipment on board. They were unable to even take photographs. Upon reaching the bottom, Trieste stirred up so much dust that it was impossible to see anything through the window. But Piccard and Walsh returned with an important discovery. Life does indeed exist at a depth of 11 kilometers. Jacques Piccard claimed to have seen an oarfish in the Challenger abyss. Modern scientists rule out this possibility. Believe it was actually a sea cucumber. Another discovery was no less important. To disprove the common misconception of the time, that there's no upward movement of water at great depths, a misconception that even led nuclear powers to consider the Mariana Trench an ideal dumping ground for radioactive waste. Fortunately, thanks to the two researchers, radioactive contamination of the Pacific Ocean was avoided. The submersible's descent took 5 hours, but Piccard and Walsh spent only 20 minutes on the seabed. During this time, the monstrous pressure destroyed the batteries, sonar, and several thrusters. A crack formed in one of the portholes. The researchers planned to return to the Challenger deep to study it further, but due to the high risk to the crew's lives, the U.S. Navy limited the Trieste's dive depth to 6.00 meters. It took half a century for another attempt to be made. It was initiated by film director James Cameron, known for his work on Titanic and Avatar. Cameron was no stranger to diving. He had descended to the depths during filming. In the film, The Abyss, he participated in expeditions to the sunken Titanic and the remains of the battleship Bismarck. Almost everything on the Earth's surface has already been explored. And in space, people are only sent into orbit around other planets, sending machines. The joy of discovering the unknown remains in one place, the depths of the ocean. Quote, "Only 3% has been explored. So many more discoveries lie ahead," said James Cameron. In the 2000s, there wasn't a single submersible in the world capable of withstanding the pressures at depths of 11 kilometers, so Cameron and his team had to design one themselves. The creation of the Deep-Sea Challenger took over 7 years. A miniature bodily submersible that barely fit one person became one of the most complex submersibles in history. 180 systems on board controlled 3D cameras, life support systems, communications devices, and a hydraulic arm for collecting soil samples. The apparatus resembled a vertical torpedo, the perfect shape for a rapid descent. Inside was a thick metal sphere from which Cameron controlled the submersible. The director invited Don Walsh, the only living person to have visited the bottom of the Mariana Trench, to watch the dive. Quote, "Do you have any advice if I hear a crack at a depth of 5 kilometers? Asked James. If you heard it and are still alive, you can continue diving. The one that kills you, you won't hear," Don reassured. James Cameron's journey to the Challenger Deep took place on March 26, 2012. The director managed to capture a large amount of footage, which later formed the basis for the documentary. James sat half-crouched, as the sphere's diameter was just over a meter. Quote, "I felt completely isolated from everyone else, as if I had landed on another planet. This absolutely empty, lifeless place," Cameron recalled. The Hollywood director failed to detect any signs of life at the bathyscaphe's landing site. The bottom appeared flat and deserted. But the soil samples James collected from the bottom of the Mariana Trench revealed numerous previously unstudied microorganisms. For 7 years after Cameron's voyage, no one disturbed the Challenger Deep. Expeditions resumed only in 2019. 10 more people visited the bottom of the Mariana Trench. All of them descended in the Limite submersible. This submarine was designed by businessman and explorer Victor Vescovo, specifically for diving to extreme depths. Victor and his submarine hold several records. He became the first person to repeatedly descend to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, and the first to visit the deepest points of all 4 oceans. Victor also broke the record for the deepest dive. The last people to descend into the Challenger Deep were the Staliks, Chinese scientists on the Fengduji submersible. On November 10, 2020, they broadcast live from the ocean floor. It was shown live on Beijing CCTV, so viewers could feel like underwater explorers themselves. Although the Mariana Trench remains one of the least explored places on the planet, its exploration has made significant progress in recent years. Each expedition into the depths of the abyss yields new answers and introduces unknown inhabitants of the deep. The most isolated place on the planet has not escaped the influence of human civilization. Underwater researchers encountered plastic bags and candy wrappers at the bottom of the trench. Traces of contamination are present in microorganisms. Understanding how these organisms learn to survive in extreme conditions could be useful in biomedicine and other fields. It is believed that deep-sea geysers could have been the birthplace of the first living creatures on the planet. So bacteria at the bottom of the Mariana Trench could shed light on one of the most important questions: how life emerged in the universe. That's all for now. Let us know in the comments what you think of this episode's heroes. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and see you soon.